You're on the air, Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell. Hi.
Hi, Art.
Hello.
This is Gene from Gloride, Arizona.
Yes, Gene.
Pleasure to talk to you again.
And to you. What's up?
Well, I sent you an email and had some stories I wanted to share with you, and I don't tell very many people these stories because I just freak people out when I tell them.
Try me.
Well, this all started, I'm a fireman, I'm retired. I'm also of sound mind, believe me.
Another fireman, all right.
Another fireman. And back in my rookie career, I'd worked an accident where we had to transport a guy about 40 miles to the closest hospital. And he'd been in a single-car rollover, and he had coded on us. So I did CPR on him for 40 minutes in the back of the ambulance.
Oh.
Got him into the hospital, and I was exhausted. I mean, it just...
Yeah, I was about to say, 40 minutes of CPR is exhausting.
It is. It's a rough deal. So the hospital crew's working him, and I'm leaned up against the wall in the ER, and I kind of saw somebody out of the corner of my eye. I looked, and there's a guy standing next to me, and he goes, "I wish they'd just leave me alone."
What? And
I said, "Excuse me?" I said, "I just wish they would just let me go."
Oh, my God.
And the doctor that was working, he looked at me, and you can just tell he saw the same thing. And that's when he called the code. He says, "That's it. We can't do any more." And I was freaked out. There was a physician assistant there.
Did the two of you discuss this? How could you not?
Yes, we did. And I am just spooked. I'm, like, ready just to hit the ceiling. I didn't know what to think. Because the guy was wearing the same clothes.
Let me ask this. The man that you saw, was that the man you worked on?
Yeah, it was him.
Did he look in any way less than fully visibly human? Was there anything ghostly about him?
No, not at all.
No.
He looked just like anybody else, and the clue was he was a big guy. He was over 6 feet, very obese. The clothes, he was wearing a Hawaiian shirt and white pants and sandals. And, I put two and two together, and, the doc and I went up to the cafeteria. This is, 2 o'clock in the morning, and he told me he sees people all the time, too.
My God, if that happened to me, I'd be the one needing CPR.
Absolutely. And I was so freaked out. I left there, and I didn't even bother cleaning myself up. I'm still covered with this guy's, blood. And I wasn't living at home. I had an apartment. I went to my mom and dad's house because I was so freaked out. And 3 o'clock in the morning, they answer the door. I'm covered with blood. They think I'm in an accident.
Sure.
And I was up all night. I couldn't sleep for days. And I went back and talked to the same doctor again. He said he started seeing people in his residency.
Oh, really?
Yes. And
I wonder how many healthcare professionals have had this experience.
There are quite a few, and it's kind of a taboo thing, believe me, because this happened over and over and over to me for over 23 years, and it got to be where I could tell where somebody was going to make it and they weren't because they didn't go with us.
Because they didn't go with you?
We'd go into a house, start CPR, work on somebody. I'd see them sitting over there in a chair or hovering around us, standing around, and never see them again, so I'm sure they're not going to go with us. They were separated, and they're not back in their body.
Were there ever any people that you saw that went back and then ended up... Yes?
Yes. And those were the ones I knew that were going to make it, because they would wind up in the ambulance with us. I'd see them at the emergency room.
Oh, my God. So you see dead people?
I've seen dead people, and it didn't happen all the time, but it happened so much, Art, that it was the norm for me.
Wildcard Line, you're on the air. Good morning.
Well, hello. I have 2 really good ghost stories. One that happened in a small mining town in Ohio when I was a child. My aunt and uncle had rented a house. The old man that had lived in it was sent off to a nursing home against his will and swore that he would come back. Well, he died in the nursing home. They moved in, and strange things began to happen. They would smell cabbage boiling. They would hear footsteps going down the hallway and the toilet flush in the middle of the night, and, of course, no one was there. Well, I went over to spend the night with my cousins, and my girl cousin and I woke up in the middle of the night to find two greyhounds standing in the bedroom with their leashes sticking straight up in the air.
Oh, that's bad.
We were like 5 or 6 years old.
Very bad.
So I left. I wanted to go home. What transpired after that was one night my aunt was bathing one of the children in the kitchen sink, and she looked out the back door, and there was a man standing there. And she kept calling to him to answer her. He wouldn't answer her, so she went and got the shotgun and fired point blank through the door. Well, the neighbor guy came running to find out what was going on, and of course there was no one there. When she gave the description, he described it as the old man that lived there. The next day, my aunt, why she didn't leave, I don't know, but the next day she had made the comment that she was going to go out and pick the grapes that were on the vines.
Yes.
And make some jelly. So she got up bright and early to go out and pick the grapes, and they were all withered on the vines. They moved shortly thereafter.
I don't blame them. Thank you very, very much for the story. It's easy to say, if I was so scared by something that I would pick up a shotgun and fire blankly through a door, I'd be the hell out of there. But in reality, we have lives. Homes, apartments, places where we live, and deposits, and the real things of life, telephones, mail delivery, a million things that tie us to a place. So what we tend to do is rationalize what has occurred. Now we have Eric here, who's sold in San Diego, sold his soul on eBay?
Yes, I did.
You did?
Yes.
I thought eBay had regulations against that sort of thing.
They did, but there is a ways to hide it. Like, if you, sell an object or something and then, like, in the background say, oh, it's my soul, kind of thing.
Really? Really?
Oh, yeah.
So you sort of snuck the soul in along with something or another.
Yes. I advertise it as a vial of air, and then in parentheses put soul. So,
a vial of air with soul. And somebody actually bought your soul?
Yes, let me start at that. I'm a spiritualist, so
can I inquire how much you how much you received for your vial of air with a soul?
I'll get to that. Well, I'm a spiritualist, so to me, the spirit is bound by the flesh, so it cannot leave whatsoever. So I figured, okay, I'll put it on eBay, and if someone's gullible enough to buy it, I'll make $5. Well, anyway, I made $215.
So you sold your soul for $215.
Yes.
And you sent this person a little vial of air.
Yeah, I just took a little vial of air, breathed into it, and closed it, and slapped the label on there.
Oh, brother. Oh, brother. Eric, now how do you know that your soul is not in that little vial, now in the possession of God knows, the devil knows who? I guess you know who, but how do you know that, how do you know your soul isn't in there?
Because as I just stated that, I believe the spirit is bonded by the flesh. It cannot leave. I believe. That's kind of a... that I understand.
Do you really? Have you used the $215 wisely?
Oh, I made a car payment.
You made a car payment with your soul. One car payment. Man, you sold cheap. You really sold cheap. Was there a buy now price?
I started the bid at $1 and the buyout for $5.
Yeah, that's really very wise. Beginning the bidding at $1 is really the way to go, or even 1 cent. It seems to cause a kind of frantic, I don't know, it's kind of like sharks feeding in the water.
Yeah, it's ego war.
That's what it is, yeah.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
And
so there are ways to get around eBay's regulations. You found it and sold your soul.
Oh, and I also want to make a couple comments on those little children that claim to be Satanists.
Aren't there, I don't know about children. They're 24.
Well,
Eric, I just want to ask, aren't there times, moments, when you worry just a little bit that little vial, well, wouldn't you like to have it back?
No. No, because I believe it has never left.
Well, if you took the trouble to breathe a little bit of yourself into that vial, then that's almost ceremonial. I mean... Okay, so anyway, you were going to comment on what you called the children.
Yes, well, because they didn't fit the psychology of what a Satanist would be. The psychology of a Satanist is power, and it is a power without either knowledge or physical strength. And so, if they were true Satanists, they would have been bombarding you with knowledge, and they didn't.
I don't know.
And
we'll just call them the children of the corn. Well, all right, Eric. I hope that little bit of hot air that you breathed into the vial did not, in fact, contain your soul. But I wouldn't take any bets on it. $215, just not. I don't think it's a good deal. Souls should be worth more than that. They definitely should be worth more than that.
I just wanted to see how disappointed I was that nothing happened with Y2K.
Oh, here we go. Where are you, by the way?
St. Thomas, Ontario. I'm in
Canada. And you are disappointed that there was not havoc at Y2K, is that correct?
Just a little bit.
How much havoc did you want?
Complete anarchy.
Complete anarchy. In other words, you wanted a total collapse of civilization as we know it.
Wouldn't that be kind of fun?
No. No, it wouldn't. And why do you think it would be?
I'm not sure. I've always looked forward to what other people view as negative things.
So, when a ship goes down, or an airplane goes down, you get sort of excited. When a volcano erupts and wipes out entire villages, you begin to break out into a sweat, and a smile comes to your face.
It's somewhat entertaining.
Somewhat entertaining. You're a real piece of work, you are. I don't know about you. Complete anarchy. Somewhat entertaining. Let's have death and destruction, and maybe you should order the George Carlin tape. That's actually what George said. Bigger disasters. It's what we need. Bigger disasters.
Time Traveler line, you are on the air. Hello.
Hello.
You claim to be a time traveler.
Yes, I do. I have time traveled.
Okay, so in other words, you're in the here and now presently.
Yes, I'm here now. I time traveled back to 1987, where I actually have...
That was actually a pretty good year.
Yeah, that was a good year. I have some proof of the matter. There is a Pink Floyd album called Momentary Lapse of Reason.
Yeah.
And there's a photograph of me in that album.
Of you?
Yes. The song is called Yet Another Movie.
Well, but how could we know that it was you of, what'd you say, 87, right?
Yes.
How would we know that was you of 87? Well, I guess it would.
Well, the way it works is your body doesn't actually time travel. Your mind does.
Well, then how would they take a picture of your mind?
They didn't take a picture of my mind. They took a picture of myself when I was in 1987.
Then you were able to physically manifest yourself in 1987, or they couldn't have taken the picture, right?
That is correct. I have a computer in my brain.
Cool. A Pentium?
No, I actually don't know what it is.
Oh, you don't have a Mac up there, do you?
No, I have a some kind of computer implant.
So I suppose when you finally do die, it's going to be the blue screen of death, and you're gone, right?
I don't think so. Actually, I'm being very serious. I'm trying.
I know you are. I'm giving you trouble. I'm sorry. Go right ahead. You have a computer in your brain.
Yes. I am in contact with the future right now. They communicate with me through this computer telepathically and psychically.
To as far out as what year?
From what I've been told, 2050.
All right. It's obviously going to be important to all of us to know what's coming between now and 2050. Any little shred of anything you can give us.
I can tell you this, that right now aliens live in us, in every single person on this planet, and no one is aware of it.
You mean every one of us are in effect possessed?
If you want to call it that. It's not something that you can notice.
If they're in us, that's what I call it.
That's what I call it, too. They possess us.
You know what? If this were real, now here's the only problem I've got. If what you're telling me would be real, I mean, I've seen Star Trek. I've seen Kirk get thrown on the floor, tortured, when he would do the kind of thing that you and I are doing right now. If aliens were actually in each one of us, then my talking about this on the air openly with you would cause me to go thrashing around on the floor in pain, holding my head, screaming, and or same for you.
Yes, it's not something that we notice, though. They don't have physical form. They are some kind of something else, but they don't have physical form, and they possess us this way. Right now, in the world today, nobody is aware of it. I am aware of it because I have a computer in my brain. The computer was put in my brain in 1992 through an MRI scan.
Why you?
Well, I've been, since late March of 1999, I've been in a psychic battle for, it's almost 2 years now. They tell me that I'm the Hopi prophet.
So you're fighting the computer, in essence? Is that right?
No, there's two sides. It's like the future is playing a game, so to speak.
Well, all this aside, and I wish you luck in your battle, it is important to us to know what's coming, if you can give us any shreds of info.
Let me tell you this, that in the future, everybody knows that there's aliens. You supposedly have a choice whether they can live in you or not.
In other words, we are the aliens.
No. Well, you know, we're all aliens.
Yep.
I mean, just look at this tiny little speck that we call Earth that we're on.
No, but I think the most important thing you said is that aliens are already here. They're in every one of us. So
That's correct.
So in effect, we are the aliens.
Yes.
The entire world has been possessed.
Yeah.
Well, okay, here's the part I don't get. The world right now is really, really screwed up. So if the aliens are in all of us, they're really misbehaving, and they began about 30 years ago. So none of this is our fault; it's their fault.
They are.
All right, sir.
They operate on a higher mind level. They operate in an abstract world.
Yeah, but they're acting like social gorillas.
They are. They're bad. They've been possessing me. I've got lumps on the sides of my head.
Oh my God.
And you know, they're in me right now.
Yeah.
They communicate with me. They have my body split in half. The left side of my body is false. The right side is true. And they tap little sections of my body. That's another way that they communicate with me.
I've seen guys like you at football games.
Really?
Yeah, in the crowd. Half of them is, well, anyway. Listen, thank you very much for the call. I almost don't know how to deal with that. God, no. What are you going to do? There's another new concept for you. Do you ever consider that not only are the aliens here, but they're in every single one of us? That would account for a lot, wouldn't it? We are all aliens. We have been long since possessed. And if we can use the mark of social behavior as a moment when it occurred, it was about 30-some-odd years ago. God, that sure would answer a lot of questions.
Alabama, all the way to Alabama. Annie, hi.
Hey there, Art. I know you're good with Morse code, and my mother died last February, and I went to her house, and I got her things, especially her little mirror she was so fond of when she was growing up, and I set the mirror in front of the microwave, and I began picking up Morse code over the microwave, so I whipped out my tape recorder real fast. I recorded all I could until my tapes were completely used up, and I still have those. And I wonder if I can send those to you. And I only heard one side of it. And
wait, hold on. The microwave was issuing microwave oven, right?
Yes, sir.
Uh-huh. There was Morse code coming out of the microwave?
Definitely dots and dashes. I've studied Morse code. I've been trying to pass my amateur license for years, and now they don't require the code anymore.
That's true.
However, I do have it on tape. And it was one side of the conversation. It would pause after several sentences and then give somebody time to answer, and I didn't pick up that side of it. I went on the Internet to see if there was any way that anybody else ever came up with a similar story, and I found one person who did. A lady said she was picking up Morse on her microwave, too.
Out of curiosity, obviously, if you taped this and you've now studied Morse a little bit, did you decode any of it and figure out what was being said?
I did, and it sounded like acronyms and abbreviations, and I couldn't figure it out, but I definitely made out letters and numbers. And there's some of the Morse that's ambiguous because you can run it together so fast you can't tell where they're stopping with one word and starting another one. And it was ambiguous because some of the numbers and letters had very similar sequences, and you didn't know where it was beginning and when it was ending. It was so fast. And I was also on my tapes. I'm going to send them to you. And in the same house, my mother and I grew up with my grandmother in this same house. And she died in the hospital. I went to a third house and got her mirror that she had in a fourth house in Virginia when she was growing up. She died in the hospital. So,
all right. Well, listen, I appreciate it. Morse code from a microwave. Interesting. Yes, I'd enjoy hearing the tapes, particularly if there's anything to be made out from it. Now, one might suggest that, as you know, when a microwave is done, it goes deet, 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 whatever, makes a little noise, right? Well, maybe that thing went crazy. Maybe it really wasn't Morse code, or maybe it was. I don't know. That's intriguing. I've never heard of a...
I believe it was actually, I said 2004. I think it was a little earlier in 2002, but basically, I believe the first person to see it was a heavy equipment operator. Saw something from the ground that looked. He thought it was an otter plane, which they use up there for transport a lot. And as it got closer, he could see that it wasn't a plane at all, but a bird. He actually got on the radio and told the people in the nearby village to get the children off the street because this thing might pick them up and take them away. A pilot who actually, because that was reported locally, he'd heard about it and thought he had a good laugh over it, and then he himself was flying passengers to another village up in Alaska, and he saw it along with all the passengers, and he measured it, estimating the size at a 14-foot wingspan.
Wow.
And looking like something out of Jurassic Park, and the local sort of scientists, biologists said, well, there isn't really anything that big, hasn't been around here for about 100,000 years. There was some suggestion that there's a stellar sea eagle that flies in from Siberia that's got at least a 10 or 11-foot wingspan, much bigger than a bald eagle, American bald eagle, that if people hadn't seen it before, would be quite shocking to see it. But this is mysterious, and I, with my work with Native people in the Pacific Northwest, of course, the Thunderbird, it's integral to all of their cultural activities there, and it's certainly something that appears, Thunderbirds in their mythology picked up whales out of the ocean.
Picked up whales out of the ocean.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so this was seen. It is true in Alaska. Anywhere you go in Alaska, any travel at all in the state, pretty much has to be by air. So there's an awful lot of small plane traffic in Alaska. You simply have to go by air. It's too big, it's too cold, it's too remote. You have to go by air, period. So
yes.
But would that be a creature like that? Would it normally be that far north in the world, or would most of these type of creatures tend to be in southern latitudes?
Well, you would think so. It really, you can't imagine, other than some huge winged eagle-like creature, what would actually be up there. But for that matter, I don't really understand what the sightings of Big Bird would be in Wisconsin or Texas either, right? I mean, it's pretty difficult as well. What was less or more easy to believe in was the idea of mythical, creatures, massive creatures in the Amazon, and that's what brought me down to Venezuela. I would say on my grandest film expedition yet.
Here's a ghost story from an emergency room in Arizona. Art, I'm an X-ray technician who was working at an Arizona hospital back in the winter of 2006. My work hours at the time, 7 p.m. to 7 a.m., graveyard shift, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. On a Saturday morning, around 1 or 2 in the morning, the ER called to tell my partner that an ambulance was en route with a 50 to 60-year-old male patient that was non-responsive with a thready pulse. We were to stand by and be ready to do a portable chest X-ray, post-trachea intubation. When the time came, my partner went to do this portable X-ray, leaving me alone in the X-ray control room not more than 4 or 5 minutes after he had left. An older white male dressed in faded blue jeans and a stained white T-shirt came to the door of the control room. Now, this is a difficult task because you need an electronic card key to access the area at this time of night. So I looked up from my paperwork, noticed this man, and asked, "Sir, can I help you?" He seemed to be looking for something or someone, but didn't answer. I asked again, "Sir, can I help you? Are you looking for someone? Are you lost?" This time, he raised his bright blue eyes in my direction and seemed to look right through me. The man said, "No, son, I think I've found my way." He gave me a sad smile, shook his head, and moved from the doorway toward the direction of the ER. So I got up and went to the open door and looked down the long hallway, didn't see anyone. I then checked the adjoining hallways, the 2 X-ray suites, even our file room, no trace of anybody. Being a little confused, I went back down the hall to the ER department to check on my coworker's progress, shaking my head the whole way. When I finally got to the nurse's desk, I asked an RN friend if she'd seen the man I described. She gave me a funny look, said he was in trauma room 1, where my partner was supposed to be performing the emergency chest X-ray. I went to the trauma room door, walked in, just in time to see the physician declare the time of death on the man I saw in the X-ray control room not more than 15 minutes prior. Needless to say, I must have looked like the one who was white as a ghost. Robbie from Phoenix, Arizona. East of the Rockies, you're on the air. Hi.
Hi, Art. This is Robert from New Orleans.
Hello, Robert.
First, let me say I got your book yesterday.
Oh, you did?
I am very, very happy.
Is that, tell everybody, I've really not been soliciting comment yet, but is that one quality book or what?
Oh, yes, sir, it is. It's much better than I thought it would be.
Well, there you are. I'm glad to hear it. We'll do a day later this week and solicit comment. Anyway, it is Ghost to Ghost night.
Okay, Art. In New Orleans, I guess you know we bury people above ground here.
I've heard.
Right. Well, my grandmother's buried in one of these old cemeteries.
Yes, sir.
We go and we clean them out every so often, clean up around them and weed them. And me and my younger son will go walking and looking for the dates on each one of these tombs. As we're going through one day, we notice that a couple of them have been broken into. So we start looking into them, and we're seeing that, the bodies have been disturbed, the caskets are open or broken or chipped out in corners.
Oh, boy.
As we go to one of the oldest ones, which is about a block down from my grandmother, it was an 8-year-old girl who died during the time that there was a bad scarlet fever going around in New Orleans, where thousands of people had died.
Yes, sir.
As I climb up to look in there, I notice there are 2 bodies in there, but these are recent bodies, like a day or 2.
You mean like the people who had been desecrating?
Yes, that's exactly who they were. There was 2 of them, 2 young men. One face down and one face up. The one face up had an expression on his face like you've never seen in your life. I ran and told the keepers of the ground, and they called the police, and the police came and everything. And 2 weeks later, I had called to ask, what had happened to the guys. And as far as I can tell, both guys had died of heart attacks. And the one who I saw, I'm sure, died of fright. And they said the coffin where the little girl had been in was, of course, opened. It was a metal coffin at the time. And they said they guessed they were robbing it at the time, and something happened that scared them to death.
Oh, my God, what a story. That's a true story?
Oh, yes, it's very true. My son talks about it all the time, and every Halloween, that's the first thing we start telling the rest of the family about.
Oh, well, thank you for sharing that with us. And no, I really do mean that. Thank you. But that is a scary story.
Yeah, it was. It still bothers me once in a while.
We can only imagine what they saw.
I know what they saw. The little girl took her revenge when they tried to break into her coffin.
Jeez. Thank you for the call.
All righty. Take care, Art.
Take care.
I actually have an offer to make to you this evening.
Well, I'm not the devil, so you can't make it to me.
No, I understand that, but you can actually take part in this for me.
Well, I don't know about
that.
I don't know. Yes?
Well, I have a son who is he's in a band out of Athens, Georgia.
Yes.
He shares a birthday with Elvis, David Bowie, and one of the Doors, January 8th.
Yes.
And I'm willing to offer up my soul this evening if your engineers will download one of his songs at his MySpace page, and if they deem it worthy, and if you deem it worthy, play it on air.
Stuart, that's not a good deal.
Why is that?
Well, it's just not a good deal. I mean, just to get a song played, to offer your soul, that's not. You've got to shoot higher. Oh, no.
Well, no, I believe in him that much, that strong.
Got to shoot much higher than that. I mean, you've got to go for, like, #1 on the Billboard charts or something
Well, this would be the first step to it.
Well, there'd be no guarantee that it would go any further.
No,
I mean,
absolutely not.
You just can't cut a deal like that. I mean, your soul's worth more.
It is. I agree. But can I mention their name?
No. No, I'm afraid not. All right, you're very welcome. And I just don't know what to say about that. I mean, to sell your soul to have a record played is just absolutely ridiculous. A song played, that's just absolutely ridiculous.
Dear Art Bell, my grandfather passed away a couple of months ago. He lived in Richland, Washington, and worked at Hanford since before I can remember, up until his retirement a couple years ago. He was an avid gardener in his spare time and left behind a beautiful piece of work. Every inch of his property was well tended. However, he also left behind something very disturbing. When my family and I went through his house one last time before it sold, I chanced upon a large metal chest that was hidden under some empty cardboard boxes in the basement. It was heavily locked. Thinking nothing of it at the time, I broke the lock and opened the heavy lid. The chest was completely lined with lead, and inside were several glass jars sealed airtight. The jars contained a variety of ordinary-looking seeds. So I took the whole chest home with me to Seattle. Now it gets weird. The next day, I planted just one single seed from one of the jars. The thing that grew from it has to be one of the most horrible things I've ever seen. It grew faster than anything I've ever heard of. Within a month, it occupied my entire backyard, choking out and killing all the other plants in its path, with its creeping vines and broad, spiny leaves. It bloomed huge, grotesque flowers that smelled like rotting flesh. The bees ignored them, but the flies swarmed. Several days later, the blooms wilted and the plant started budding its terrible fruit, fist-sized chunks of raw meat. Before I could stop him, my dog had eaten one. He became very sick. Within a few hours, all of his hair fell out, and he died. I'm scared, Art. I tried angrily to hack the plant with a machete, but its thorny vines are extremely tough. It's now growing back stronger and faster than before. Nobody that I know has any idea what it is or what to do, and I'm on the verge of contacting the local authorities. God help us if the rest of these seeds should ever fall into the wrong hands. Signed, Bill in Seattle. That's pretty weird stuff, folks. And it just goes on and on and on. So we're in the middle of another, I don't know what you would call this, another flash of totally weird stuff as the moon grows full. All right, back to talk radio. That catches you up on just a little bit of what I have, and you've got to admit, it's weird.
Let me give you a quote from a movie and see if you can tell me what movie this comes from. Okay?
I'm not good at that, but sure.
Well, you will get this one, I believe. Money, not morality, is the principal commerce of all civilized nations.
I have no idea what movie it came from, but
that was
it's
a Thomas Jefferson quote from the movie The Formula, starring Marlon Brando and George C. Scott.
But I was going to say it's absolutely true.
It is true.
Yeah.
You know, the Genesis Project, which was actually called the Genesis Project, was what the Germans were doing during World War II. And that was the formula for synthetic petroleum.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I'm sure you've heard, of course, you've been in this business for years, you've heard many people say, and many of your guests say, that there is a formula for synthetic petroleum.
Maybe.
Well, look here, on your question.
I've heard a lot of things said, man. I've heard about the 150-mile carburetor. I've heard about, hey, listen, hey, we're talking gas from regular water. I've heard all that, yeah. But I haven't seen it.
Real.
I haven't seen it, though.
No.
Have you?
Probably never will.
Well, okay.
Well, look here, the crisis is real.
Yeah. All right, then.
As far as reality goes?
Yeah, it's real. Can the American people accept that? No.
No. No. Pump price.
Yeah.
I'm up late this evening doing my income tax. Last year I spent $16,000 on fuel with my business. You're
not in a good frame of mind at all, then.
Oh, no, I've had to write a check or two tonight, but steal and kill, people are doing that already.
But
well, it will get worse. And support the war. We've gone to Iraq twice.
Yeah.
To protect our oil.
It's already going on.
And let me ask you a question. You had a guest on that said the reason that we went into Iraq was because of the conversion from American dollars to euro dollars.
Well,
you remember that?
Yeah, I remember.
What do you think of that?
I don't think that's the reason we went to Iraq.
Well, no. Do you think that's one of the reasons?
Maybe. Yeah, maybe one of them. I don't know.
You think if the United States, the U.S. dollar went to the euro, in other words, instead of using the United States dollar and go to the euro dollar, which is $1.38 today, I believe, that would really affect us, wouldn't it?
Yes. Yes, and, you know, I live in a narrow little world, right? I'm a ham radio operator. I just watched one of the best-selling radios in the world for ham radio operators, kind of an entry-level medium, actually one of the best radios ever made, go from a price that was, it was a transceiver, and it was made in, is made in Japan. At the low point, it was selling for $706, a clue to its manufacturer, perhaps. It just,
the price just went up to $950. $950. And the stories are legion that we're getting, that it's the yen versus the dollar versus the euro, but specifically in this case, the yen versus the dollar difference. So prices are already taking leaps and bounds and jumps, and it's incredible. East of the Rockies, you're on the air. Hello.
Yeah, that's really wild that you had this guy on about this fuel situation, chemical, because that's exactly what I was going to talk about.
What?
Well, suppose there was a guy in the 50s that lived, and he was a chemist, and this guy worked for Halliburton, of all things. And the kids around the neighborhood, this guy was always tinkering around in his garage, and we had motor scooters, and the guy says, "Come over here, I'm going to show you something." And he takes some water and some chemicals and puts it together, and it fuses around, and then all of a sudden it smells like gasoline. And he pours it in the motorcycle and says, "Now ride your motorcycle."
Yeah.
And it ran on it. And after some more refining, when we progressed to where we have a 55 Chevy, he says, "Here, let's try it in your 55 Chevy." So we fill up the tank. Of all things, it runs on it. And
what happened to this man?
That's another story.
Well, let's hear it.
This guy is a single guy, and
so what became of him?
Well, he tried to do something with this, and they come in and confiscated all of his stuff and took it away and all. And
do you believe all this?
Do I believe it? Yeah, I believe it.
You do.
And they made threats on him. So he put out.
Well, they can't kill you. You're on the phone.
Two different sets of the manuals for this.
Okay. So did you get one of them?
I don't know who has them.
You don't.
I know they exist.
Oh, darn. So in other words, somewhere out there, there's a way to turn water into gas.
Yeah, they exist. I know they exist. Okay.
Yeah. Well, you
and he said that
you don't know that because you don't have a manual.
And he said if something was to happen to him,
yes,
hang on to it, because as long as there's plenty of fuel, this will never let.
No, but you don't have the
come
manual.
to the surface.
You don't have it though. So who did he tell this to? Not you.
Well, he told it to a group of us.
A group of you.
And we still know who each other are.
You do. And but you don't know where the manual is.
Oh, I know where. Yeah.
Oh, you do know where it is.
Yes, I do.
You must have a death wish.
Yeah, right.
Calling a talk show like this with a story like that.
How do we get that out without
dying?
Ended up in the same problem he had.
I imagine a big oil truck rolled over him or something, right?
I don't know what happened to him. He
just equivalent of that.
Ceased to come home, and he sold his house. Somebody sold his house. We never saw him.
I don't know, sir. I have to be skeptical about these kinds of claims.
Sure you would, but how would you get something like that? That was my question.
In other words, assuming you had the manual, how would you get it out?
Somebody has a manual. How would you get it out without in the same scenario that he wound up in? You have an answer for that?
No, I don't. Given a little thought about it, then maybe. I mean, we've got the internet. I suppose publicizing this manual worldwide, well, that would be a good start. I mean, just publicize it worldwide. How about that?
Yeah, I guess that's possibly.
Go to an internet cafe somewhere.
But then you totally don't make anything off of it.
Well, don't you want to save the world?
Well, both. I'd like to make something, too.
Well, I would imagine, if verified, such thing would be worth a very great deal of money. Of course, when you went up to Larry King or whoever and said, look...
yeah, right.
Yeah. So...
I wanted just to hear what you would say when... in that scenario.
Okay, I don't know now. See,
how would you...
You want to make money... Look, I got to...
One night, it was Halloween night, in like I said, 77 or 78, I worked in the evening from 4 to 12. And when I got home, now these guys, the other three guys had been sort of dabbling in the occult. They'd gotten a bunch of books on demonology and stuff.
Oh, my.
Yeah.
Your roommates were doing this, huh?
Yeah, they were doing that.
Now, that's a red flag right away. Didn't that worry you a little bit?
Not really, because, I have my own beliefs, and I'm not really that...
I mean, you weren't worried about ending up on a sacrifice altar some night with the three of them staring at you?
No, not really.
All right.
These guys were a little bit nuts, but they weren't that bad.
Mm-hmm.
I think I would like to think that I would have...
What is your first name?
Eric.
I mean, Eric, they would be looking down at you saying, Eric, we gave you every opportunity to join us. we really wish you had. But now we need you for a higher purpose. And then there would be this long, jagged, twisted knife. You know how that goes.
Oh, yeah.
And at any rate...
Ritual sacrifice.
That's right. So none of that was true.
No, none of that. But I came home and I found that they had gone into the basement. Now, this was a big, long apartment building, 2 blocks long. It was a zigzag architecture, sort of like an L-shaped pattern.
Mm-hmm.
And in our section of the building, we had exclusive use of the basement. And I came home and I looked around and I didn't see him anywhere. And I happened to notice that one of their books was out on the table. So I went down looking for him in the basement. And they'd gone ahead and made the protective circle of sanctified sand, and
yes,
they had the pentacle on the
pentagram
floor on the inside of the circle of sand.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the guys was doing some sort of a summoning, attempting to summon a demon.
Yes.
And like I said, I'm not exactly the most believing individual in the world. I've got my own religious beliefs, but the demonology in that, I sort of...
That's okay. Here they were, trying to summon up something with big teeth, and
right in the middle of it, I made the comment, if there is a devil, give us a sign.
Wait a minute. That makes you part of it,
Well, yeah, I guess so, but at the same time, I was being a sarcastic little schnuck.
Peer pressure, I guess.
Well, no, I was being sarcastic.
So you said, fine, if there's a devil, let's have a sign, and what happened?
Well, inside the basement, far corner, was a foot locker. Okay, old World War I wooden foot locker.
Right.
And inside that foot locker was a radio. It's funny, you'd mentioned the transistor radio earlier.
Right.
This was a transistor radio. It had been in a fire. It was one of the other guys. It had been his brother's, and he had stuck it inside the foot locker after it had burned. Why, I don't know, but he did. And it was one of those things where the foot locker itself was damaged. Nobody could get into it without destroying it because his younger brother had gone ahead and pulled a practical joke on him and stuck some super glue in there.
Yep, that'll do it. All right, so we've got to get to the punchline here.
The key had broken off. Nobody could get in.
Right.
That radio had not worked in I don't know how long. And immediately after I said, give us a sign,
yes,
that radio started playing.
Well,
she is a devil woman with evil on her mind.
It started playing that.
That's correct.
Do you understand the implications of that for your soul?
Yeah.
That's a very nice laugh you have, but I'm being very serious. Do you understand?
No, I understand what you're saying.
Are you ready for the ride?
There won't be. There won't be.
Uh-huh.
I know where I'm going.
Do you? Have you ever been in an elevator in like a 50 or 60 a story building, and you press the down thing, and it's like you lose some of your weight, and you can feel yourself lightening up as it goes down?
Oh, yeah.
Uh-huh. Well, that's nothing compared to the ride you're going to take.
Well, maybe.
Just having fun with you. But that is not good. You do not, particularly in a situation of a circle of safety, protection, a pentagram, 3 other guys, ask for a sign from the devil, and then obviously get one and not be somewhat concerned about your ultimate destination, and it won't be on a L1011. First time caller line, you're on the air. Hi.
Mr. Bell.
Yes.
It's been a long time. I've been trying to get in touch with you. I sent you an email approximately 2 months ago concerning vampirism.
Vampires.
Yes. Did you receive it?
I remember getting some email about vampires. What specifically did it say?
Precisely that I'm from New Orleans, Louisiana. I'm calling from Florida right now. I have been involved in a vampire society for, most of my adult life.
You're telling me you are a vampire?
Yes, Mr. Bell, I am.
Okay.
I sent you an email because I was going to go public with information concerning vampirism in America and how it's affected in the media.
Well, the media basically ignores it, except, of course, for movies and television and that sort of thing.
For disinformation.
Yes. And so here is an opportunity then to learn the true story behind vampirism. What is your story? What is an American vampire?
An American vampire.
That's right.
It's true that the media ignores it because I did rent out a conference room at the Plaza to hold a press conference in New York 2 months ago. I sent you an email concerning it.
Now, you know what? I would have remembered that. You were going to have a press conference?
Yes.
And announce you're a vampire?
Yes.
Wow.
And no one from any legitimate media sources in New York arrived.
Oh, no.
You know, tabloid journalists and assorted, I can't even put words to them, underground.
Low lives.
Yes, arrived at the Plaza, and no one would take it seriously. And it's basically because
I'll take
vampirism
it
is a lot larger than people think.
Well, okay. I will take it seriously. Let us discuss what a vampirism really is and isn't.
It's a way of life. It's a known fact where all these myths come from that the sun does drain energy from our bodies. That's why we are creatures of the night. That's why we do go out nocturnally. But
do you, as you know, the movies will show a vampire actually sizzling and burning up in the sun?
Disinformation.
Disinformation. I thought as much. Well, there you are.
But the sun does weaken you, just like anyone else, and people who do thrive on blood and other bodily fluids are affected even more by the sun. And the moon does energize people. And people who are in the vampire lifestyle do know of this, and that's why they do travel by night.
Well, let us hit the bottom line here. Do you actually drink blood?
Yes, Mr. Bell, I do.
Do you really? Human or animal or both?
There have been times of both. I try to stay with animal blood.
Yeah, what little I know of vampires, the more, this sounds silly, but the more ethical or moralistic vamps go for animal blood and pretty much leave humans alone. Is that true?
Yes. A lot of the kids who are now getting involved in this pseudo-vampire cult and the romanticism of vampirism, they're experimenting with human blood, but human blood is only taken from vampire to vampire in rituals, also in sexual activities. It heightens the senses, but only with the partner you're with.
Mm-hmm.
For feeding, mostly cattle.
Cattle?
Mostly cattle. I had a club in New Orleans. It was called the Blue Crystal. It was a vampire bar. and we had associations with local butcher shops, and we would get cattle blood, and we would serve it with alcoholic beverages.
How do you, lovely, how do you go into a butcher shop and ask for blood reasonably?
You have to understand the city of New Orleans. The city of New Orleans has been...
I'm going down to New Orleans in September, as you would mention it. I'm going to go to New Orleans.
By the Blue Crystal on Decatur Street.
Really?
But don't mention my name. I am.
Don't mention your name?
I'm sort of an outcast.
Why?
Because I did go public on cable access television in New Orleans concerning vampirism.
In other words, they don't like the limelight as well as sunlight.
Pretty much, Mr. Bell.
How did you become a vampire?
I was introduced to it by a woman.
Figures.
I was 14 years old.
Seduced.
You could call it that.
I did.
Many female vampires are also succubi.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And, yeah, that's a pun there. But I was introduced to the lifestyle. I was introduced not only to the heightening of the senses, but also the social stature in the city of New Orleans.
What is it about New Orleans, anyway, that is conducive to this sort of thing?
I think it came from the West Indies and also the European influence. New Orleans is the most European city in this nation, and it holds very strongly to its European values.
Well, it also is the home to Anne Rice, who writes about people of your ilk.
Yes, Anne is a very special lady.
So, in other words, vampires generally look at the work of Anne Rice as flattery.
The work of Anne Rice is, I will tell you now, Mr. Bell, more fact than fiction than she will let the public know about.
Well, I had a feeling that might have been true, actually.
Miss Rice was repaid for a favor. And I don't care if telling you this now. These are things I am... Oh, can you believe a vampire with goosebumps? I have them now. But Miss Rice was repaid by a vampire in New Orleans.
I'm not sure I want to know more about that. I think we'll just leave it there.
Well, her success came back. Her success was given to her by a vampire. And she is highly successful, and she always will be. And she's highly protected.
How long, is there any difference in the lifespan of a vampire and a normal mortal?
Mr. Bell, I would be happy to send you a photo of myself. I am 38 years old.
Yes.
I look like I'm 22.
Uh-huh.
I entered in vampirism at the age of 14, and I will say that I've aged 8 years in 24 years.
Not bad.
Not bad at all.
Beats most skin creams. But, you know, it's such a distasteful thing, this drinking of blood. How do you get past that part?
It's actually flavored.
Flavored?
Different flavorings. It's not what you see in the movies where someone just goes to someone's neck or rips open a vein, or it's ingested through other means. Like I say, at our bar, the Blue Crystal, alcoholic beverages were laced with blood. Also, the food you ingest.
Giving new name to Bloody Marys.
Yes, or blood sausage.
Great. Oh, great, a blood sausage. Well, is there anything else critical that we should know?
Well, I wish people would have came to the press conference. All I want you to know that the media...
Why did you... Now, that's a good question. Why did you want to hold a press conference? Why did you want to go public? What was your motive?
Because of the youth of today. Your term, the quickening, is very on target.
I know.
We have a lost generation. People who are my age, in their mid to late 30s, they're going to be a valued commodity because there is no generation to follow them. They're very few and far between. Vampirism is contributing to that. We have serious vampire cults from Florida all the way to Seattle.
So you're trying to tell the American people there are many more vampires than they might imagine.
Yes, and they're not the kids you see with the black makeup and the pale white skin and all this. They're the ones who are basically the stormtroopers. They're the ground troops. the people behind the media are promoting this, promoting bands like Marilyn Manson, promoting all these bands, and getting the youth involved in it, but not letting them up to the upper echelon to know what the plan is.
What is the plan?
Basically to dispose of this last generation.
Wow.
The human race will not be around much longer, not as we know it.
No?
And it's a shame, and there are people in levels of society who know about it. They know of the plan.
How many vampires do you think are there now in America?
Over 1 million.
1 million vampires?
Yes, Mr. Bell.
Well, that's frightening. That really is frightening.
You can pick up any magazine.
Yes.
People, Variety, and read names, and 20% of the names you'll read in Variety are vampires.
Really?
We're talking major studio heads, major corporate executives.
So there are more vampires by percentage in Hollywood then, for example, than there are elsewhere, say in St. Louis.
Well, actually, if you look towards a city like Chicago, the birthplace of Walt Disney was a vampire, Mr. Bell.
Was he really?
And the tradition follows in that company.
I mean, I've heard so much about Walt Disney, but that's one thing I've never heard, that he was a vampire. And so
it's true for him.
Really?
And the tradition carries down with people in this organization.
He did so many good things, Walt did, that it's hard to imagine him as a vampire.
I'm not saying vampires are evil. They live a different lifestyle.
I'm sure from your point of view you wouldn't believe that, of course.
You know, of course, he did many wonderful things, but he lived a certain lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
And that lifestyle, it has been perverted. That's what I'm trying to say. They know what's happening in this world. They know where the human race is headed.
So
they don't care.
Your intent, then, was to...
Let the world know we're here.
Uh-huh.
Quit hiding the fact.
So you're coming out of the casket, so to speak.
I like that. Maybe put that on a T-shirt in my next business endeavor.
Well, I mean, that is what it amounts to, isn't it? All right, well, listen, I really have got to leave, I'm afraid, because we're at the bottom of the hour. But this has been a unusual discussion.
Mr. Bell, keep it in mind. If you have your email filed on computer, try to find that.
All right, I'll see what I can do. Otherwise, send it again. Thanks for the call, and call us again.